Hello, I'm Dave Barkemeyer, Milam County Judge. I want to review with you the proposed 2019 county budget. This next year's budget is going to raise less revenue from property taxes than this year's budget by some 6%, even though we proposed a 3-cent increase in the tax rate from 70 cents to 73 cents per $100 of valuation, and even though we're going to be collecting about $165,000 in property tax revenue from new property that's been added to the tax roll. And that's also with an increase of about $130 million in taxable value of our houses and other structures in the county. That's some $700,000 to up to $1 million less in tax revenue for us here in the 2019 budget, for us to use in the 2019 budget. And again, even with a 3-cent increase in taxes. Now I know that sounds impossible, but it's true. And the reason is that the aluminum power plants were shut down here at the first of the year and essentially removed from the county's tax roll, except for about $30 million or so in salvage value. Now that's a summary, or what you're looking at here is the summary of the first page of what the budget reflects. It also points out that this year's effective tax rate is 79.68 cents, or almost 80 cents, which is the rate that we would have had to raise the tax rate to bring about the same amount of taxes for 2019 as we collected this year. So we'd had to raise the tax rate about 10 cents instead of only 3 cents to match the last year's revenue. Now the rollback rate is also shown on this first sheet, and it is 90.9 cents, which is the rate that would have called for a rollback election. The bottom line on this page shows the amount of debt in the county, which is just over $4 million, which is not all that much anymore, which is the amount that we still owe on the law enforcement or jail facilities, and that'll all be paid off in 2024. The second page of the budget shows the proposed budget for 2019, along with the expected revenue for this year, 2018, and the actual revenue and expenses in 2017. The current fund balances are also shown there through the end of July 2018, which is where we are currently. And the current debt, which I just mentioned, being slightly over $4 million, and the principal and interest payment that'll be due on that debt this coming year, which will be $656,000. These numbers can be very confusing to you, the average citizen, if you're not familiar with county budgeting, which most all of you are not. So I'm going to go through, as I've done all of my years, 8 years in office, and I'm going to, for the last time, once again go over and try to explain the budget to you. Now take a look down in the lower right hand corner and you'll see the number $19,830,502. That's the overall proposed budget for 2019. I'm going to take that $19.8 million budget number and break it down for you so you can better understand what the county's planned revenues and expenditures are in 2019. And secondly, what the county's actual revenue and expenditures have been in the past and what they will likely be next year and on out into the future. The first thing you need to understand about the county's budget is that we always budget in reserve funds and even any anticipated borrowing, both on the revenue side and on the expense side. Now this next sheet here that you're looking at is the 2019 budget, the $19.8 million that I mentioned, but with the reserves pulled out, both on the revenue side, which you see at the top of the page, and on the expense side, which you see at the bottom of the page. Now what's left is the actual planned revenue or income for 2019 of $14.95 million, and that's on the top of the page. So you see we've built in $4.87 million in reserve funds. 900,000 of that in the general fund reserves that we hope to have remaining at the end of 2018. 500,000 that is planned borrowing in 2019. And again, only if we need it. We probably won't need it. And I'll explain that later. There's 1.7 million in reserves in precinct 1, 700,000 in precinct 2, 500,000 in precinct 3, and 570,000 in precinct 4. All of these are anticipated to be remaining in the bank at the end of 2018. That's what we think we'll have left at the end of this year that we won't have spent. Now, nothing is for sure. This is what we call budgeting, or our best guess. So with the proposed 3-cent increase in the tax rate and the tax roll numbers that I got from the appraisal district, I've estimated the ad valorem tax revenue for 2018-2019 for use in spending in 2019 will be a total of about $10,486,000, so on. So about $10.5 million is what we expect to get in taxes in 2019. We'll start collecting those in October of 2018. We've estimated that revenue from all other sources, that's fines, fees, grants, and the like, without the built-in reserves, will be $3,474,500, and we estimate our sales tax revenue next year from the county's half-cent sales tax will be about $1 million. So our total revenue for 2019 is estimated to be $14,950,502. Now that's what we plan to collect next year. Again, let me emphasize that's the plan. 14.95 million, not 19.8 million. The 19.8 includes our reserves, or money that we'll have left in the bank at the end of this year. The 14.95 is what we'll collect next year. Now, look at the bottom of the sheet. You'll see there in the middle column that we budgeted in $2,978,794 in anticipated reserves in the general fund and the 4 precincts. So actual planned expenditures for 2019 are only $16,851,608 and not $19.8 million. So you can rightfully conclude from looking at this that, and this is our, if that were to be our actual performance, we would need to spend about $2 million of reserves to meet this budget, since the plan is to take in $14.95 million in revenue while spending about $16.85 million. So we would have to we'd have to spend $2 million of our reserves in order to meet that plan. But that's the plan, and that won't be what actually happened. So let's dig in a little deeper and try to understand what will actually happen next year. Now, this next sheet that you see is it compares the proposed 2019 budget that I just showed you with the reserves taken out to this current year's budget with the reserves taken out, and to the 2017 actual spending. Interestingly enough, you can see that the same thing was done in 2018. We planned to spend about $2 million more than what we anticipated to take in revenue. So Very likely though, and by the end of this year, we will actually spend no more than we take in. We'll actually have a balanced expenditure versus revenue for 2018. And if you look back in 2017, we actually took in more revenue than we spent back in 2017, due primarily to the fact that we had some additional revenue come in from TIF grants. Note particularly now, before I move on from this page, the cuts in expenditures planned for 2019's proposed budget. We're planning to cut some $300,000 in the general fund and some $450,000 in the precincts. 2019 budget versus 2018 budget, and that's very significant. Current reserve account balances are shown at the bottom of the page. That's the reserve monies that we currently have in the bank. So we have plenty of reserves in case we do have to spend some of our reserves in 2019. We'll talk some more about that as we go along. Next, before discussing the budget any further, I want to take a little bit of time to review with you the changes that have taken place in the county's tax base since last year to help you better understand why we're taking these drastic measures in next year's budget. This next chart that you're going to be looking at here, or that you're now looking at, compares this year's 2018 county tax roll that we received from the appraisal district before we started planning the budget for next year. And it compares it with what we ended up with in 2017. These 2018 numbers are the official 2018 roll that I got from the appraisal district. The numbers that you see in 2017 are the actual numbers that came in after all of the protests were completed, and they're the actual numbers for 2017. The actual tax roll, the 2018 numbers will not be the final numbers because the protests were not all resolved by the time the appraisal district had to give us the official tax roll. So those numbers, the 2018 numbers, will actually be a little bit higher than what you see there. When doing the budget, I usually shoot for a little bit higher estimated tax revenue because of that. Now, going down the page, we'll just take one category at a time. You see the taxable value of land stands the same overall as in 2018 as 2017, $294 million. That's the taxable value. The market value of ag land actually went up significantly from last year to this year, $200 million in round numbers. But the ag exemptions went up about the same amount. Home sites and non-home sites land stayed about the same. So overall, our land values, the taxable portion, stayed the same. So that means that there's no additional tax revenue going to be coming in this year or this next year for land. However, the next category down is improvements, and the improvement values went up significantly. As I mentioned earlier, our homes and other structures went up significantly by $130 million, or about 13%. So that's the big change in taxable value. Other than this next category, the non-real estate, which is personal and industrial property, it went down $466 million. That's huge. That's almost $500 million. But that was offset some by the drop in exemptions of $177 million, which was the exemptions that Luminant had, their environmental exemptions. So if you subtract those two, the net loss was $289 million, which is almost exactly the amount that the Luminant the shutdown of the aluminum power plants was reduced our tax roll. So what has happened is that the huge loss in value caused by the shutdown of aluminum was partially offset by the significant increase in home values and other improvements in the county. But the overall result was a drop in net taxable value from $1.673 billion to $1.503 billion, and then freeze adjusted taxable value from $1.446 billion to $1.269 billion. So at the bottom of the page there, you see the tax calculation, the estimated taxes for 2017, 2018, and 2018, 2019. And the freeze adjusted value is what you multiply by the tax rate. So if you take 2017 freeze adjusted value multiplied by 70 cents and 2019 value and multiply by 73 cents, which is the rate that we're proposing for this next year, and then add the amount of taxes on the freeze properties, which we get that number from the appraisal district. They tell us how much those taxes will be, and that's the taxes on the freeze properties, which are the properties for old guys like me. And you come up with the estimated total ad valorem taxes for 2017, 2018, and that was 11.3 million. And for 2018, 2019, which is 10.3 million. So, as I said, these 2018 numbers are before all the protests are settled. So I boosted those numbers a little bit to use in our budget planning for 2019's budget, and I used, in round numbers, $10.5 million of anticipated revenue from ad valorem taxes for next year. So, being optimistic. But this conservative estimate that you see here on this sheet shows that we'll collect about $1 million less 2018, 2019 than in 2017 and 2018. On that first page of the budget proposal that I showed you to begin, it showed about $700,000 less, because I did, as I said, boost that number a little bit in our budget planning. And that's even though we raised the tax rate from 70 cents to 73 cents. Now this next page that you're now looking at shows how we plan to cover for that tax base loss. In the general fund departments reduced their budgets by over $300,000, and you can see that here. The county clerk's office reduced their budget $35,500. District court reduced their budget $25,500. District clerk reduced theirs $18,000. IT reduced theirs $20,000. The county attorney's office reduced theirs $13,000. Tax office $40,500. Sheriff's operations $86,000. Emergency management $78,000. So that's $316,500 total in budget reductions in the general fund, and each of the commissioners reduced their take of the ad valorem taxes by about $125,000 each, for a total of $500,000. So as you see, we reduced our budget a total of $800,000 plus. And that is significant. That is very significant, and that means that we're going to be reducing some of our county services this next year in order to cope with this loss in tax revenue. And if necessary, we'll spend some of our reserves. Hopefully we won't have to do very much of that, as I'll explain as I go along here. This is what happened to the aluminum valuation over the past 8 years. Their value came down from a peak of $722 million back in 2009 to now only about 30 million left in salvage value. This next overhead shows what's happened, the impact that that's had on our county tax roll and on our county tax collections. The top line is the freeze-adjusted tax base for Milam County, which has steadily declined from 1.76 billion in 2010-2011 to 1.269 billion this year. That's a decline over $500 million, or about 30%. We've increased the tax rate from 60 cents to 73 cents during that time period. The total amount of ad valorem taxes collected by the county, which you see on the bottom line, has held near the same or been lower all through these years. And we plan to collect significantly less taxes this next year, even with the 3-cent tax rate increase. We'll collect just under $10.5 million as compared to $11.38 million in 2016-17 and about $11.2 million in 2017-18. And if you look back all the way to the beginning of this chart, we only collected $11.2 million way back in 2010-2011. My point is, we've managed the county these past 8 years without increasing taxes. In fact, most of those years we've collected less taxes, and in 2018-2019 the budget we're planning will collect almost $1 million less than we've ever collected before. I would say that there's probably at least very few other counties in Texas or any other government agencies in Texas or the United States for that matter that can make that claim. The bad news, however, is that for many of you individual taxpayers in this county, your taxes have gone up, and they've gone up significantly because what's happened is because of the aluminum reduction and ultimate shutdown, their taxes have been shifted from them to you. That I regret, but the good news, the really good news is finally we have new industry coming to Milam County which will help with this situation. So we've known all along that economic development is essential to relieving the situation that we've been experiencing here for several years. Now I'd like to focus on the general fund from this point forward. As I've said, the commissioners will each receive $125,000 or so less in ad valorem taxes allocation this coming year and are committed to reducing their spending accordingly. They've cut their budgets about $450,000, but they'll manage however they see fit. If they decide to spend some of their reserves, they'll do that in order to keep up with the county roads, and they take care of their business and they do it very well. But I want to go through with you kind of what's happened and what will be happening in the general fund. It consists of the budgets of the rest of the county, about 35 or so county departments and accounts. As a review, this is the total of the general funds department as budgeted for 2019, without the reserves included. We plan to take in about $10.2 million in revenue and have planned expenditures of just over $11 million. And again, I emphasize that that's the planned expenditures. We've never spent $11 million. We always plan in more than we actually expend. And we won't spend $11 million this next year. This is just the budget. It's not what will actually happen, and I'll show you kind of what will actually happen. The $6.6 million that you see there is the ad valorem tax allocated to the general fund. And that's a greater portion this time because of the cutback that the precincts, that the commissioners are making. It's a 67.5% of the ad valorem tax after debt service versus 65%, which we've always had since I've been county judge. So we're making a change there this year. The 1 million is the county's half-cent sales tax on the revenue from sources other than the ad valorem tax. And all of the sales tax goes to the general fund. You can see that 1 million is more than we've received in 2017, but our expectations are higher based on the new industry that's coming into the county. In fact, I suspect we'll collect more than $1 million in sales tax in 2019. Our total budget plan for $3.6 million in revenue from sales tax and other sources is conservative, considering that in both 2016 and 2017 we collected more than $3.7 million, and looks like we'll do better than that this year as well. And housing inmates in the county jail is the primary reason for this uptick in our income from other sources. Now let's take a look at our budget plan of 11+ million in expenditures for 2019. If this were to occur, we would need to spend almost all of our $900,000 in reserves to cover the deficit between planned revenue and planned expenditures. First of all, this is not likely to happen, as you can see by looking at this page, which shows the history of the general fund performance during the years that I've been county judge. Particularly, look at the total expenditure numbers. In 2017, we spent $10.8 million, which included $200,000 in capital expenditures, which we spent on the new office building over in Thorndale. So that was really only $10.6 million that we spent in non-capital. But other than that, going all the way back to 2011, the highest year was 2013 when we spent $10.3 million. And we budgeted $11.4 million that year. But I expect we'll spend about $10.6 million this year, which would be the same as what we spent in 2017. So in 2019, I think $10.6 million is a likely scenario at maximum. We've always budgeted in a cushion, and so you can see by the percent, usually we spend 5 to 10% under the budget. But if we do go over and we spend more than the $10.2 million budgeted revenue, we'll have some $900,000 in carryover reserves available in case it's needed. This is the first page of the 2019 proposed budget detail, and you can see highlighted in yellow there how we built the reserve into the budget on the reserve side. Note that I've also requested that we build in the ability to borrow an additional $500,000 in case an unforeseen or emergency situation should arise during the year requiring extra funds. I've made the statement before that the rule of thumb is that a financially healthy county should have in reserve in the general fund about 3 months or around 20% of annual spending, which in our case would be about $3 million. We've never been able to get there since I've been county judge. And our $900,000 that we're anticipating having in the bank start going into 2019, the $900,000 is well below $3 million. So we need something in our budget for unforeseen situations since we don't have the cash in reserve. This is page 5 of the budget, which is the expense detail, which shows the general account expense sheet. I've highlighted in yellow there the reserve fund line, which shows $552,018, which means that this amount has not been allocated to be spent for anything at this point. This means that $500,000 that would be borrowed as a tax anticipation note, and that's only if it's needed, is not allocated for anything. It's just in there in case the future county judge and the and the Commissioners Court has something happen, and it's there if they need it. And there's actually 52,000 of the 900,000 reserves that hasn't been allocated for anything. So that's how it's put into the budget. This next series of sheets shows the allocation of funds among the general fund departments from the largest to the smallest. And I just put that in so to remind you one more time where the money goes. And these overheads that I'm showing you in this presentation, along with the budget detail, is on our website if any of you want to look at all of these in detail. As you can see, the largest allocation is to the Sheriff's Department jail account, jail operation account, $3.35 million. That's 29% of the total general fund budget. The Sheriff's operation is second, $1.5 million, or 13%. So as you can see, over 40% of the general fund budget goes to the Sheriff's Department. Next is the general fund account, which includes workers' comp, unemployment, retiree insurance, and all that sort of thing. As you can see, the county provides a lot of services. Your tax dollars are spread among a wide diversity of activities, totaling over $11.6 million. If you add this to the commissioner's accounts and the debt service expenditure of $656,000 for next year, and that'll total up to the $19.8 million. That number, of course, has the reserve numbers built in. This includes the built-in reserves, as I said. Every month, the Commissioners Court meets, and I show everyone where we stand versus the budget on revenue and expenditures. This sheet here happens to be and all of these are posted on the website if you want to look at them. This is where we stood at the end of July. This is just the general fund sheet. I show the road and bridge accounts, the precinct accounts, and everything. We've collected 99% of our ad valorem taxes this year, and we'll easily reach 100%. So our estimates this past year on our ad valorem tax collections were right on the mark, and I'm confident my projection for this next year is accurate as well. I've had 8 years of experience, so by this time I ought to be able to figure it out. So anyway, we are at $2.328 million on revenue from other sources year to date through the end of July, for a total revenue year to date of $9.1 million. We'll easily reach our budget goal for the year of $10.4 million. I expect we'll do about $10.6 million, again primarily because of what the Sheriff's Department is doing in the way of housing inmates. We expect just over $800,000 in August, or we spent just over $800,000 in July and August, and we'll spend about 6.7. We spent $6.7 million year to date, which is right on budget. But if we'll average $800,000 through the end of the year, which is 5 months remaining, that'll be another $4 million. So we'll end the year at about 6.6 or 6.7 million, which will match our revenue and allow us to carry over all of our reserves into 2019. That should be 10.6, 10.7, I'm sorry, which will just about match how much revenue we bring in. So I'm telling our Commissioners Court that I think we'll have almost all of our $900,000 in reserves to carry over. Since I've been county judge, I've made it a practice to survey the counties around us here in this part of Texas that are counties of similar size to Milam County. I've surveyed 12 counties primarily on pay and salary data, but I also look at other things as well. And I learned to do this while I worked in industry to better understand where we stand on pay and to form a pay policy. Early on, I formed the opinion that we ought to generally pay our employees in Milam County and our elected officials at the average of the counties of similar size in this area of the state, versus say some sort of comparison to pay here in the Cameron area or in Milam County, like comparing to, some people have said, well, you ought to compare it to the banks, to the schools, etc. around the county here. And I learned quickly that it's impossible to find enough similar jobs to get any kind of meaningful data. So I look at surrounding counties, county jobs, and I also look at total compensation, because all of these counties have pay into the state county retirement program. They pay for health care, pretty much like we do here. So, and you see here, you see the counties I've been surveying every year. Most of them are in the population range of 17 to 30,000 compared to our 25,000 or so. Coryell and Bastrop are somewhat larger at 75 to 80,000. Some of them are somewhat smaller. Tax rolls are all over $1 billion compared to our 1.45 billion now, up to close to $3 billion, except for Bastrop County, which is at $6 billion, and Falls County, which is only at $600 million. Budgets vary from 11 million to 26 million compared to our 19 billion gross, except again for Bastrop County, which is 35 million, Falls County, which is only 7.6 million. Tax rates are all over the map, from 45 cents to 97 cents. And this year we're not giving any pay increases, even though we're well below the average in almost all county jobs except for the Sheriff's Department. This sheet here shows the results of this year's salary survey. I'm not going to spend much time on it except to say that we worked hard to get the pay levels in the Sheriff's Department up, due to the fact that pay levels in these counties that we survey pale in comparison to the larger counties around us, such as Bell County, Williamson, Travis, McLennan, and so on. So that's where we lose our top folks to these high-paying places. The fact that we're housing a full load of our county inmates, in our county jail, also makes it imperative that we try to keep up. The final point I'll make is that many of these counties will be granting pay increases in 2019, which will put Milam County further behind again, which will mean that the pressure will be on our Commissioners Court in 2020 budget planning to once again have to catch up. Another item that the Commissioners voted to place on the ballot on November the 6th is what's called the Farm to Market Road Tax. If passed by you, the voters, this would allow the Commissioners Court to set up a separate county tax rate in addition to the one we already have. The revenue from that tax could only be allocated to the 4 precinct road and bridge accounts to be used for road maintenance and improvements and for flood control only. It could not be used in the general fund. It would allow the county tax to exceed, the combination of the two, to exceed the current 80-cent maximum, and could eventually go as high as $1.10 combined. You recall I told you the Falls County rate is currently at 97 cents. That's because they have a farm to market tax over there. But they are still subject to the rollback rule. For example, this year, our rollback rate is right at 91 cents. Now we can't go over the 80 cent, can't go over 80 cents because we don't have a farm to market rate here currently in Milam County. If we did, the Commissioners Court could have gone all the way up to 91 cents, or there almost to 91 cents, and you, the voters, could not have petitioned for a rollback election. So, Whether or not you vote for this farm to market rate for Milam County is up to you. It's your call. Finally, Bitmain is here. Yahoo! That's wonderful. That makes this presentation so much easier because this next year's budget should be the one that we're presenting to you here. Should be our last disaster plan. The next one should be much more positive. Their management team has related to us that they plan to invest $1.2 billion. That's almost as much as our current tax base over the next 8-year period. And they'll be hiring 350 or 400 people and will begin immediately. In fact, they've already begun. They're expected to be in operation this year with a significant portion of their equipment and have already begun hiring. The Commissioners Court approved them for our county tax phase-in or tax abatement program this past week. The investment schedule that you're looking at here that they submitted is in the left-hand column. In 2019-2020, they plan to invest a total of $465 million, another almost $400 million in 2022-23, and so on for a total of $1.24 billion. The second column is the estimated appraisable or taxable value for each year that we came up with. Their equipment depreciates quickly because it's computer type equipment that gets obsolete in a hurry. And the next column is the abatement that Commissioners Court granted Bitmain, 80% for the first 5 years, and then for the last 5 years, 50, 40, 30, 20, and 10. The right-hand column is the estimated ad valorem tax that the county expects to collect even after the abatement is granted. So, as you can see, the anticipated taxes are substantial, beginning with $250,000 the first year and going up from there, totaling some $7.5 million over that 10-year period, abatement period. And this is huge. This is good news, such good news. But this isn't all. Alcoa is not asking for an abatement on their property, which is being renovated and leased to Bitmain, and its value will be greatly enhanced on the tax roll. So that'll be additional ad valorem taxes besides the ad valorem taxes from Bitmain. The sales tax to the county will be significantly impacted immediately in the months ahead. First, for the construction and renovation, we've already seen an uptick in the first year in this past month, which was the first month that they started doing the renovations out there, and later by the increased housing and retail activity. But there's still more. We're told that there are additional industrial occupants soon to be announcing that are coming to the Alcoa site, that Bitmain is not even the largest. So the fortunes of Milam County are definitely moving onward and upward. I'm delighted that my successor will be facing a much more pleasant but an equally challenging task of dealing with a growing rather than a declining county economy. Thank you very much.